Have you ever watched a movie and at one point just wondered, how did they do that? If so, it's no wonder. Modern film technology has become so advanced that almost anything is possible on the big screen. That's precisely why, in this video, we want to look at some of the most famous and legendary movie scenes of all time and show you how they were created, because there are often amazing methods behind famous scenes. After this video, you will never see some movies with the same eyes again, and here and there, we also have some curious and spicy facts for you. It will be exciting, so stay tuned. Here at Wisefool, we'll start with a film series that probably every one of us grew up with. While the Harry Potter films are filled with breathtaking scenes that leave you speechless, one particular moment was particularly difficult to pull off. So difficult that the producers weren't sure how to bring J.K. Rowling's vision from the books to life. It involves the Quidditch tournaments, where Hogwarts teams fly through the air on their brooms, chasing multiple balls. Of course, no real flying brooms were invented for the filming. Instead, the crew used a different, not necessarily less elaborate, method. A gigantic hall was rented for these scenes, in which ropes and cranes were built, to which the brooms were attached on one side and the cameras on the other. So while Harry and his friends sat on the brooms while driving through the hall, the cameras were flexible to the maximum to depict the game's action perfectly. In addition, the entire hall was outfitted with blue curtains onto which the pitch was projected after the fact. Filming a Quidditch game alone, therefore, often took several days. Let's continue with a movie that not only broke all records in animation, but was also much more complicated to make than you might think. It's about Frozen, the Ice Queen. Frozen is not only the most successful animated film of all time, but it has also spawned numerous iconic characters that are loved all over the world. For example, the snowman Olaf. But how is Olaf created? To create these characters, the best draftsmen in Hollywood are hired, who first pencil in the ideas of the scriptwriters. Olaf is then drawn again on a tablet. With the help of artificial intelligence, these drawings are then animated and brought to life. Afterward, details, subtleties, and so on are manually optimized. In the case of Frozen, however, there is another challenge: the many vocal parts of the animated characters. This is done very interestingly. The film music is recorded live by an entire orchestra, which sees the corresponding scenes on a screen while it plays. Only afterward, the mouth movements matching the singing are added. All these processes are so complex nowadays that the production costs for animated films are almost always significantly higher than for action blockbusters. Next, we come to just such an action blockbuster, The Dark Knight. In what is probably the most popular Batman film of all time, there are two spectacular scenes behind which there is a very interesting making of, but which could not be more different. One is this scene in which a truck flipped over, snout first. Even though the scene looks like CGI, it's surprisingly real. The stunt team uses a 40-ton truck here, with a rope device, a catapult, and explosives on the ground. This was made to roll over. Although this was extremely dangerous and financially risky, with the know-how of the professionals, everything went smoothly, and one of the most spectacular stunts of an entire decade was in the camp. Incidentally, another moment was created differently, which could be seen in the film only a few seconds later. Here, Batman is chasing another truck in his Batmobile in a tunnel. Since this was not feasible, the makers had to get creative, so they recreated everything in miniature and had a mini Batmobile chase a mini truck through a mini tunnel by remote control. Since all the proportions were right, everything could be adapted as if the scene had taken place in a real tunnel. Incidentally, the director of The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan, is considered one of the world's most creative action directors. For his blockbuster Inception, for example, he had a rotating room built at the cost of millions of dollars so that he could shoot the famous corridor scene there with virtually no artificial post-processing. Let's continue with a film that the world is talking about, Avatar 2. While the first film was already one of the most elaborate, the second part is better. A new invention was used for the breathtaking animation scenes. James Cameron and his team invented stagecraft technology, especially for filming Avatar 2. The idea behind it is simple but ingenious. Stagecraft technology allows actors in studios full of green screens to see directly and in real time what the scenes will look like later in the finished film. To do this, the actors are equipped with hundreds of sensors that transfer every movement to the artificially generated figures of the navies in real time. So on set, the actors and crew don't just see their colleagues, they see the finished animated characters right away, making it easier for them to make creative decisions. Since the film story is set primarily in water, this tracking technology is also used there. While the actors move underwater in large water tanks after weeks of training, they are tracked with millimeter precision from the outside using the latest motion sensors and from the inside using body trackers. But there are some things that even technology can't influence. To move underwater as long and authentically as possible, lead actress Kate Winslet learned to hold her breath for over 7 minutes. The underwater scenes in Avatar 2 are thus a mix of technical mastery and physical peak performance. While we're on the subject of James Cameron, let's move on to another James Cameron film and one of the most dramatic scenes of all time, the sinking of the Titanic. With Titanic, it should be clear to most that the film was incredibly expensive to produce. However, James Cameron's extreme effort in telling the story of the greatest shipwreck in history is beyond imagination. To make everything look as real as possible, the producers had a 1-to-1 model of the Titanic built in a shipyard in Mexico just for the film. But as if that wasn't enough, the 270-meter-long replica was constructed to be tilted several degrees on a platform. So when the ship slowly starts to sink in the film and everything starts rolling around, this was recreated the same way on set. The model was also specially adapted for the scene in which the hull of the Titanic broke. This effort alone shows James Cameron's obsession with detail and why he is the director with the highest box office takings of our time. Let's continue with a film that was the measure of all things 30 years ago, Jurassic Park by Steven Spielberg. Back then, the whole world was amazed by this scene. But how was it possible to make a dinosaur look so real in the early 90s? The trick lay in a mix of elaborate engineering and stunning effects. On the one hand, the T-Rex was moved by numerous full-size puppeteers. On the other, the appropriate lighting was adjusted after the fact. During the shoot, a crew member was also positioned away from the cameras to make loud dinosaur sounds. Next, we come to Matrix, and with it, one of the most famous scenes in film history, the famous moment when Neo dodges numerous bullets in slow motion. The remarkable thing about this so-called bullet scene is the extra bullet time technique named after it. While in the film, it looks as if the moment of dodging is driven around Neo with spectacular camera movement, the reality looks quite different. In reality, countless motionless cameras were set up on the set, which is not on a real roof, but consists entirely of green screens, filming Neo from every angle, no matter how small. Afterward, all the camera shots were cut together, making it look like the camera was rotating once around Neo. This technique was so revolutionary that it was subsequently used in numerous other films. Let's continue with an actor who can't be missing from a list of movie scenes shot incredibly, because he has often risked his life for his movies. Of course, we're talking about Tom Cruise, and in this particular case, the movie Mission Impossible, Rouge Nation. In the film's intro, Tom Cruise's character hangs onto a cargo plane during the star and flies to dizzying heights while hanging from the plane. This can only be special effects. You think? Not quite. Because Tom Cruise performed this stunt, of course with fuses that were touched away, but still, Cruise hung himself on the outer door of the plane before takeoff and let himself fly up to a height of almost 1,000 meters. Both the headwind and the temperatures were extremely punishing. Nevertheless, Tom Cruise performed the stunt 7 times until the take met his standards. You may think what you want about Cruise, but he's probably the most daredevil actor ever. Finally, we now come not to a specific scene, but to a movie shot uniquely, Sin City. When Sin City hit theaters in 2005, the whole world was blown away by the unique and stark look. Everyone wondered how the directors could consistently implement such a unique visual style in almost every location. The truth, however, is different from what everyone suspected. The film was shot in only one location, a green screen studio. All the backgrounds, bars, and locations were added to the film after the fact. The actors spent weeks exclusively in a studio full of green screens and had to imagine every environment in their imagination for every scene. So even intimate scenes were shot in front of brightly lit green screens, and sometimes not even real beds, but only on green mattresses. So the romance and magic of the film were not present on set, and even details like blankets and sheets were only artificially created. Tell us in the comments about which film tricks you found the most blatant. Otherwise, check out this video from us. Subscribe to Wisefool for more exciting content, and see you next time here at Wisefool.